This meeting is being held remotely and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcasts available through the Council's website. The IJB is a joint data controller of Inverclyde Council and NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde under the General Data Protection Regulations and Data Protection Act of 2018. This meeting will be broadcast and recorded to fulfil a public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during this remote meeting will be retained in accordance with Council published policies available through the Council's website. Members of the IJB are reminded that they can follow the IJB's established meeting protocol, including around the use of the chat facility, and the comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who also received invites to the meeting. Now, before I actually start the meeting formally, I think it's important just to note the passing of our friend colleague Margaret Tate, who was the chair of the Community Care Forum, Your Voice Inverclyde, which she was instrumental in setting up as well. Margaret, I think, I heard quite a few comments about her that she's very much a force of nature. I think it's fair to say in a very good way. She was a tireless campaigner in Inverclyde who worked to help others in the community to get better access to better services and live better lives. Now, she had no easy life herself. She lost her husband in 1974, which left her to bring up her 2 young children herself, which at that time and today is still no easy thing. So it's a real credit to everything she achieved in her life. I think probably the best description I can give of her is to leave it to Karen Haldane, the CEO of Your Voice Inverclyde, who described her as a beacon of wisdom, strength and kindness. Now, I can't really think of anything better to say about her, but I just think formally, if we could record how sad we are at her passing, if that's okay, colleagues. Thank you very much. Okay, if I can move on to the first item on the agenda. Do we have any apologies, substitutions or declarations of interest?
We have the following apology for absence. We've got an apology from Karen Turner with Lindsay Ann McDonald substitution. Chair will now move to a roll call before asking for declarations of interest. And the following members please indicate their presence at the meeting either in person or remotely.
Just before we do that, I saw Sandra Reynolds' hand was up on the screen. Sandra?
No, I'll speak when it's declarations of interest, thanks. Sorry.
Okay, thanks Sandra. Sorry to interrupt.
David Gould?
In the meeting.
Councillor Brennan?
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Jackson? Councillor Jackson? Councillor Quinn? Present in the chamber. Councillor Reynolds?
Present remotely.
Dr. Metcalf?
We're present online.
Leslie Ann McDonald?
Present remotely.
Dr. Ryan?
Present in the chamber.
Kate Rocks?
Present in the chamber.
Jonathan Hines?
Present remotely.
Dr. McDonald?
Present remotely.
Sorry, Miss Craig Gibbon?
Present in the chamber.
Laura Moore?
Present in the chamber.
Dr. Jones? Gemma Epley?
Present in the chamber.
Diana Crone?
Present in the chamber.
Charlene Elliott?
Present in the chamber.
Donald McQuaid?
Present in the chamber.
Heather Davis?
Present in the chamber.
And Stephen McLaughlin.
I am present online, thank you.
Are there any declarations of interest?
Sandra?
Thank you. Just to mention for agenda item 7 and agenda item 12, in agenda item 7, section 4.3 and section 8, in section 8, it refers to pharmacy. If I contribute, then it may be in my role as lead community pharmacist for the HSPC and pharmacy champion. And in agenda 12, that section I've contributed to that paper in that role, but I don't see that as as a problem in me contributing to any discussion that I may want to take part in. Thank you.
Councillor Jackson?
Yeah, Chair, just to say attended remotely. Apologies, I couldn't get off a mute there.
Thank you. Okay, colleagues, if that concludes the apology, substitutions and declaration of interest, now move on to the items for action. The first thing we're looking at is the minute of the meeting of the last IGB on the 18th of November 2024. Does anyone have any comments or points they wish to raise, or any concerns about the factual accuracy of these minutes, or accept them as an accurate record of the last meeting? I'm looking around the room. I'm not seeing anyone, so we'll take those. Donald, do you have your microphone on?
Sorry.
That's okay. That's fine. Wasn't sure if you have a point to make it up. Okay. So in that case, if we can take those as an accurate reflection of the meeting. And if we can now move on to item number 3, this is the voting membership update. Kate, I believe this is your full time.
I'm quite happy to hand. Sorry, I'm quite happy to hand over to Vicky.
Apologies, Vicky.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to ask the NHIB to note a number of changes to its voting membership arrangements, all set out in the report. As noted in the report, the chair and vice chair positions have rotated early, and members are to note the appointment of David Gould as chair of the IGB. It's also to be noted that the council confirmed the appointment of Councillor Brennan as vice chair at its meeting on the 23rd of January. The council has also confirmed the appointment of Councillor Jackson as a member of the IGB to replace Councillor McMahon. These changes in voting membership have an impact on the membership of the IGB Audit Committee, and this will be considered in the next report. I'm happy to take any questions.
I'm not seeing any questions for Vicky at this point. Colleagues, are we content to take the paper as is, or does anyone want to save myself and other colleagues from doing so? I see Paul shaking his head, so yeah, we are all head for it. Thank you very much. Okay, in that case, colleagues, if we can then move on to supplementary agenda item number 4. I believe this paper is late and coming out. There's some work still to be done on it. Time.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to appoint members to fill vacancies which have arisen on the IGB Audit Committee as a result of the various changes in voting membership of the IGB, which were referred to previously. So the IGB is asked to agree the following: the appointment of Karen Turner as a Health Board voting member of the IGB Audit Committee to replace David Gould, the appointment of Councillor Quinn as the chair of the IGB Audit Committee, and the appointment of Dr Metcalf as Vice Chair of the IGB Audit Committee. I'm happy to take any questions.
Colleagues, any questions, or are we content to accept the recommendations of paper number 4? Again, looking around online and in the room, I think we can take that as passed. Thank you very much for that, colleagues. In which case, we can move on to the financial monitoring report for period 7. And Craig, I believe this is you.
Thank you very much, Convener. And this is period 7 monitoring report, and this is a standard finance paper that brings forward for the IGB and covers a number of main areas. These are mainly around the current projected position, a current capital position, and a reserves position. The paper also gives an update on the progress we've made against the saving targets to date. As at period 7, we're currently projecting an overspend of £636,000 for the overall IGB. Social care element of this is currently projecting to overspend at £575,000, and the health budget is projected to overspend £61,000. Obviously, by year end, we will use reserve if required to bring this position back to break even if that happens. Moving on, children, a wee bit more detail of it. Children and family are currently projecting just under a £4 million overspend, and it's mainly due to residential placements and child respite overspends. At present, we're using the use of the non-recurring pension monies to help smooth this overspend for the next few years while this review continues to take place. This is an area of risk for us going forward, and we're currently in discussions with partners around this potential risk. This is partially offset by underspends in older persons, assessment and care management, and physical and sensory. Looking at the health element of the budget, Mental health in patients is projected to be overspent by £562,000 and prescribing is just over £1 million. This is mainly offset by vacancies across all our main areas and underspends in mental health communities. Savings review groups are currently underway, which are specifically looking at prescribing costs. The next section highlights the progress to date on the achievement of the year on savings, which we agreed was part of the budget process in March. As you can see in the report, we've already made good progress in the delivery of our savings, and we've delivered most of our savings for this year, and we're well on track for next year. Some areas of risk for us are around strategic services review of community alarms, but we continue to work on that. Section 7 shows our overall earmarked reserve position, and it shows we started the year with 19.287 million worth of reserve and expect to finish the year 12.024 million based on our current projections. Moving on to the capital section, section 9 shows the current capital position, and at this point we're not showing any significant spend to date, and this is because the majority of our spend is likely to be incurred in the next financial year with our projects such as the community capital project. As always, there's a lot of information in the financial report, but as always, happy to put any questions in a moment.
Colleagues, if you can open it up. Paul. Thank you for your report, very comprehensive as ever. Can I ask you a couple of questions? Your patient care management, it says you're getting underspent on respite. If you could give us some information on what's happening in the project going forward. And also, if you could answer about the set aside budget. Is it ever actually used? Because it's never used and it always seems to break even because I've never known it ever be used for anything. And finally, your reserves position will leave at the end of the year with £12 million. Are you quite happy with that going forward?
So, thank you very much. I can start with assessment and care management. It's predominantly vacancies, and that's been pretty much the case with all the budgets that we have on that side of things. I don't know if anybody from service wants to add anything onto that, or if you're quite happy with that. Next one, I'm going to take on the set aside. That's an amount that we get from the health board directly to deal with acute services. We don't have, I would say, a massive involvement in that particular budget. For us, it's always break-even position because we always get the budget based on the actual costs coming from the health board. To say this comes up now and again within the IGIB, and totally appreciate that. That's why we added a wee bit more information onto the report before. But the set aside is not really anything the IGIB can do an awful lot about on that side of things. And finally, on the reserves position, £12 million. As is, you'll never get a finance person saying it's enough on that side of things. But in terms of our overall risk, we still have some reserves there as part of our general reserves, and we've also got part for our smoothing reserves, which we will have to factor in for our next few years in terms of where we're going with the overall finance strategy. But in totality, it's in our reserves that we've got, three reserves we've got, are in line with the 2% that we have stipulated from us from SIPFA in terms of the recommendations we should have.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Craig. Leslie, online.
Thank you, Chair. I have a comment and a question about paragraph 5.2. The comment is on the second part in relation to prescribing. I'd like to commend all concerned for the work that's been done there, particularly what's a short sentence, but it refers to less expensive generic drugs, better waste medicine management, and only prescribing clinically necessary drugs. I'm conscious how much work and effort will go into GP colleagues in doing that, and I think that's an excellent piece of work. My question relates to mental health, and that's the overspend, which I think is a national issue in mental health inpatient services, but it's being offset by an underspend in the mental health communities budget. It's probably not a finance question, but is that placing that particular service under pressure? Thank you.
If it's okay, I'd like to pass on to Katrina to answer that.
Absolutely great, thank you. And thank you for your question, Leslie.
Hi. Firstly, the overspend in mental health inpatients is a national challenge relating to mainly increased clinical activity, and it's probably a sign of the increased acuity of the patients that we have within our inpatient wards. However, I would say that this year we have dramatically reduced that overspend from what it was this time last year. In relation to mental health community services, the underspend is predominantly related to vacancies, and we continue to go out for to fill our posts. We've made no reductions in our mental health posts. However, as fast as we're bringing people in, we've got retirements, we've got people moving on. So it's a continual challenge, but it hasn't detracted from the service that we're delivering. What we are doing, however, is as part of the strategy, is we've got 3 development sessions coming up over the next 3 months with frontline staff, and that's to look at how we can implement the board-wide community mental health framework, which looks at the pathways in and out of our service and how we can adapt and change some of our referral pathways in, but also some of our discharge pathways out, obviously in conjunction with some of our third sector partners. So it hasn't detracted from the service, and we have reduced the overspending in patients.
Through yourself, Chair, I just wanted to add a wee bit extra onto that from Katrina, just to highlight that obviously recognition of the good work that's been done in the service around this, and put it into context. This particular budget was nearly £1 million overspent this time last year. So it just shows you that the kind of work that's been done to help bring that down over the last 12 months.
Thank you very much for that, Graham. Thank you for that explanation. Katrina, Leslie, are you content?
Very content, Chair, thank you.
Oh, very content, even better. At this point, can I just ask Craig, in terms of, for members, in terms of going forward, the budgetary process, obviously we face considerable challenges, particularly in prescribing children and family. Those are issues that are going to go away. You just outline to us what the next steps are in terms of the process, so we know what to expect for the next couple of months.
Sure, no problem at all. We're in the process of setting up an IGIB development session for early March, where I'm going to bring forward the current position of where we are. We're in a position that we have roughly an idea of what we're getting from the Social Care Council side of the budget. We've got an idea of where we are from the health side, which is, everybody will know, it's the general 3% uplift, which has come about. We're working on the background, pulling those figures together and doing the number crunching. We're also looking at the savings of where we are and where we are in comparison to what we need for next year. So a lot of work has been done on that. We're not a million miles away from that. So I hope to bring that forward, but more than I hope I will bring that forward to you in early March, which will give us the information that we need to have that discussion at that point and update the savings on where we are. And then at that point, we'll be bringing forward the final budget report for the 24th of March to the next IGIB. So there's still a bit of work to be done on it, but we're not a million miles away from discussions. So when I think it's scheduled at the moment, it's going to be, we're looking at the 4th of March as the day that we'll get everybody back there.
Excellent. Kate?
Can I just add, and we're also working in partnership with our parent organisation, which is the council, who recognise some of the challenges that we're going to be experiencing moving forward. So I think that's important to state.
Excellent. Thank you for that, colleagues. Also, just in terms of, we are looking at not a 2-year budget this time, we're just looking at a 1-year budget.
That's correct. It's a 1-year budget I'm looking at.
Okay, thank you very much. If there's no other questions or comments.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I did not see that. Apologies.
That's okay.
I'll get the hang of this eventually. Just throw something.
You need to sit up in that high seat and you can see
It's not Game of Thrones.
You're avoiding,
Not
you're avoiding sitting up there in a special person seat, Michael. No, so it's probably the year we're talking about the budget, and you know, I'm sitting here with 2 hats on, one at IGIB, and I've also got the sort of councillor hat where I was sitting having budget discussions about the council side. So obviously the biggest conversation we're having is about the children's and family and that overspend, and you know, the pressure that will add to the council. So we had a really useful in the budget conversation, we had a really interesting conversation about that and why it happened, and you know how. So I think from this forum, I think it would be useful to understand why that pressure and how it's probably going to be an ongoing pressure and the reason for that, and also probably to recognise that it's a statutory
function, so we kind of don't have a choice. We have to deliver it. We might discuss how we deliver it differently, as we call it, to try and scrape some money together to make it cheaper to run, but clearly it's a statutory function, so we don't get an option. But I think we had a useful conversation about why that's happening, you know, and I don't know if the rest of us would be, if that would welcome everyone to try and understand what's caused that overspend and how that's going to continue.
Thank you for that. Kate.
Thanks.
So because we're having ongoing discussions with our parent organisation, which is the council over that matter, we are pulling that information together. We have presented a series of papers that kind of explains, and Jonathan's redesign is on there, but that in itself won't solve all the issues moving forward. So we do hope that we'll probably be able to bring a paper back in March to the IGB. We obviously need to consult with the council first about the direction of travel and work in partnership to understand what you've exactly said. Some of this is not within our gift. It is statutory legislation that we've been mandated to undertake, and IGB does that on behalf of the council. So the starting point is to talk to the council, and the council have been very receptive to that discussion. So just to reassure the IGB.
Yeah, thanks. No, yeah, I think we'll look forward to the paper then, and then we can understand. Yeah. I always like to see the people in that kind of detail, you know, about we don't have, and we're doing the best for our young people as well, which is important.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. And apologies for not catching my eye, or my eye not catching your eye. I'll just look round the room and online to make sure I'm not missing anyone else. Okay, colleagues. In that case, can we accept the recommendations on page 18? Take that as done. Thank you very much. In which case, could we move on to agenda item number 6, which is the rolling action list. And none of these actions are going to be discussed today. Will Craig, Jonathan, or Kate, if you want to speak to any of this at this point? Craig?
Thank you very much, yourself, Chair. This is just that this is a rolling action list, and it highlights for the work that we're doing as an IGB and SMT, and highlights for the next 7 cycles where we see the vast majority of our going to be. A number of those papers are on the agenda today, so doesn't go into much more than that.
Any questions or comments for Craig, colleagues? No, in that case, if we could then move on to item number 7. Sorry,
Dr. Becker.
Sorry, Becky, I am clearly going to have to get glasses.
No, I was a bit slow. Sorry. Thank you, Chair. I was just checking, and apologies if I missed this, but the report on the action plan to reduce for the 2025-26 mental health grant funding was down for today, but that's not on the agenda. Is that coming back another time?
I'm probably going to defer to Katrina there, because I think that action plan is a wider board action plan in terms of the impact of it, because the impact of this section, I think it will be the action 15 monies, will be that has a board-wide impact, Becky, but I'll let Katrina come in here.
Thanks.
So there's 2 elements to the Action 15 money. We get a local allocation, but we also contribute to some of our board-wide services that Inverclyde benefit from, in particular some of the specialist mental health services like adult eating disorder service, the ESTEAM, which is the early intervention in psychosis. So we got our allocation, and there was a reduction because overall the amount of the funding received from the Scottish Government was slightly less than what we had anticipated. But I think I reported at the last IGB, it has had minimal impact on us in Inverclyde because we had a project manager post that we were able to remove, which took away our deficit, and it didn't impact on our frontline posts.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, is it okay to come back on that?
Absolutely, Becky, please do.
No, I was just checking because obviously in the rolling actions and the minutes from last time, I remember we discussed this at the last meeting, was that an action plan would come back to this meeting, and that's what we've said we'd do. But that's why I was just checking.
Yeah.
There's
I
not
think,
really
I think it's probably a good point that you're making. I think that's probably an error because we were able to close it off at the last meeting because it has very little impact. So I don't know how that's got there. Craig and I are having that conversation that it probably should have been taken off. But if the IJB were happy to agree that from what Gina is telling us, because the impact of it was marginal, and well, it was significantly but marginal because we were smaller HSEP, we were able to offset it in wider efficiencies, but and if we could just agree that we could take that off and that should have been removed.
Becky, you content with that?
Yeah, I'm absolutely happy with that. And if we minute today, that's what we've agreed, that's fine by me.
Excellent, thank you for that. Brilliant. I'm not seeing any other questions or comments this time for certain. In which case, thank you very much for that. If we can move on to agenda item number 7. This is the NHS GDC whole system winter plan. I think Al, you're speaking to this bit.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is an update to the IJB on the NHS GDC whole winter plan and the arrangements that we put across GDC in terms of the 24-25 winter period. I think this weekend has just demonstrated that some of the many pressures that can be put onto the services and how that's planned for. Planning started for the GDC-wide winter plan way back in May 2024. In reality, this is planned throughout the whole year, bringing together colleagues across all parts of the GDC system to look at how we can make sure that our services are maintained and capacity within services are maintained through periods during the winter when we know there's pressures there. The GDC whole system winter plan comes in 2 parts, which is a narrative document describing the whole system plan and a summary of the key actions that are being undertaken this winter 24-25, and a more detailed action plan setting out the most specific actions that are going to be undertaken and are currently undertaking in terms of managing winter pressures. The plan is based on the Scottish Government's winter planning priorities, and there's 4 of them, priority 1 to 4. Each priority gives a level of where services should be provided at the right place, right time, and hopefully avoiding the need for either access to hospital care or any delays in service users who are in hospital care being delayed coming back into their own homes. So the 4 priorities lay out the basis of the plan and how the plan's been pulled together. Really the key elements within the winter plan and setting out a context. We recognise there is a cost of living crisis nationally and how that can impact on health. The plan covers across really its areas of prevention and also managing and maintaining services. So it covers across vaccination, across COVID, influenza, the respiratory virus, looking at how we provide urgent care and maintain urgent care across primary care services, community services, pharmacy and the acute hospital services, how we maintain and protect key services such as cancer, urgent care and planned care, how we communicate and measure a message to our public about, again, getting the right service at the right time and looking at alternative services such as Pharmacy First, which we'll discuss in a paper later on today. We also look at how support services are invaluable about maintaining frontline services, and a key part of the plan is also maintaining the well-being of our workforce, resource in terms of maintaining services and how we maintain a robust workforce. As I say, the plan is set out in 2 parts. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Alan. I'll open it up to colleagues. Does anyone have any questions for Alan at this point? Yeah.
One of the priorities here is about reducing falls in the community. Yet I understand the chief officers have agreed to decommission the community falls prevention team that operates across Glasgow combined. And I wondered how that fits in, because these are people who wouldn't necessarily need rehabilitation, the patients, that is. but this is more about prevention, and it seems to have been in direct conflict to the plan.
Yeah, thank you for yourself, Chair. We're very fortunate in Inverclyde that we've got a fairly strong and robust allied health professional service and rehabilitation. And part of that is also how they support falls, especially within the care home environment. The data that we have to date showing that our actual falls locally, we've actually managed to prevent and seen a decrease in falls. So really, as an HSAP, we still recognise that that's a key area of our prevention of hospital admission and admission through the emergency department. So our local rehab teams are working very closely. And again, a paper that's coming up later on today in terms of our the work that we do supporting care home environments also demonstrates that we work very hard locally to ensure that we've got robust support across the system, of which falls as part.
Diana, you content with that?
Yes, although usually these are patients that wouldn't go to the rehabilitation team because they wouldn't have fallen so dreadfully that they needed rehabilitation as such. And I just wondered if we were catching these people as well.
Yeah, again, it's part of what we're looking at locally around falls. And I say data at the moment showing we're actually we've got a fairly good success rate in the prevention of falls, and we're seeing that level decreasing. So it's something that we'll certainly be monitoring throughout the year.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks. I gather that the First Minister made some announcements at lunchtime about let's expanding the service, particularly looking at frailty and so on there. Can I actually is there a frailty service in Inverclyde?
Again, our service around that is around our allied health professional work that we through the Centre of Independent Living. So that's a service that also includes our joint store, equipment store. So again, that service works very closely with our community nursing service in supporting older people with frailty.
Right. Because I understand there's just a thing we at lunchtime we said we want to expand the duty service at front door. Is there one here? I don't know mention microphones.
Yeah, so we've actually got a frailty advanced nurse practitioner in Inverclyde as well, who's currently supporting wider work across GGC in addition to that in terms of rolling out some of the really good work that we've done. And she works with the acute consultant and clinics and does have a clinic up at the hospital, and absolutely working at supporting that team at the front door to make sure that we're turning around anybody we can and getting them back into the community.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Kate?
And if I can just add on to this, it's some of the work that managers and frontline practitioners are doing around enhancing their integrated front door. We'll make that offer greater, so that we're getting that early intervention and help, but also recognising where some of the challenges are sitting by streamlining our processes so that we're able to develop that data. So IGB will be given the development day, will be given an update around that work at the development day in March. So that might provide some assurance.
Thanks. I see we need some announcements today because obviously the headlines seem so interesting to see what's about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that question. Francesca?
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm just thinking we've got a bit of the benefit of hindsight here in terms of the winter planning when it comes to vaccinations. And I was just thinking, is there anything much more you can say, Alan, in terms of what we were looking at here in our area for uptake and sort of rolling out the vaccination programme, how it went just over the winter period? We might have come, I'm just thinking from some of these deadlines on the table, we were looking at the sort of end of December 2024, so we might have come to the end of the winter vaccination programme, and if you can tell us a bit more about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think that's a very, very, very important point. Certainly the messaging around vaccination will continue throughout the year, whilst we're still there's still opportunities to be vaccinated just now, and I think probably even in terms of I think this year, the predictions around what will be the kind of key pinch points in terms of viruses. Obviously this year the data still coming in, but influenza A has certainly over the Christmas period we've seen quite an increase nationally in there. So the key message to our community is about the value of vaccination, and I recognise that post-COVID maybe there's some vaccination tiredness sort of lag, but the benefits of vaccination certainly outweigh the risk of vaccination. So that key public messaging will continue throughout the year, and as we move into the next sort of vaccination period, you know, again, it's the accessibility of vaccination. You know, this year we've to ensure that our vaccines, bringing the vaccines to our community a lot more, especially in terms of harder to reach areas, you know, having mobile vaccination units. So really trying to get that message across, you know, where somebody's eligible for vaccination, we'll make that as accessible as possible, and especially key is our health and social care staff as well, our colleagues, to make sure that vaccinations for the workforce are available as well, because that's a key point of support as well. So through our colleagues in primary care and other services, we will certainly be pushing that vaccination message throughout the year. Yeah.
Can I just a wee follow-up question just for my benefit the committee as well? Obviously, we're getting this report now at the end of January. As the health board members, my fellow health board member colleagues, we obviously saw this at the end of October as well. So it feels like a little bit behind the times in terms of getting this. But it's not a criticism, it's just I understand that there are always reasons for this. But in terms of looking at how we perform specifically within Inverclyde, maybe Alan, you could speak to how we then feed into the health board in terms of how we have performed and ultimately how that performance comes back to us as well as a committee.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's a good point. Obviously, these papers work their through a process, but the key theme and the key areas that we look at in this, they're essentially carried out throughout the year. And certainly in Inverclyde, we have maintained our winter status, winter planning team locally. It's winter throughout the whole year, because all of these processes, whilst they're seasonal focus, you know, in the winter time, most of these processes what we should be doing throughout the year anyway, and so we maintain that throughout the year. And I think you'll see that we bring reports back to the IGIB in various areas, you know, be it through, you know, discharge activity or how we support in the community, the care home support, the call before you convey. We maintain that throughout the year. We don't step down, basically. We keep that emphasis throughout the whole year. Probably the vaccination message is the one that we would certainly ramp up as we start to go through the summer period into the autumn. But it's about maintaining the momentum behind us.
Thanks, Alan. Colleagues, any more questions from colleagues at this point? See any? In that case, I would take that we're happy to note the contents of the report. Alan, thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. Now, if we can move on to item number 8, this is the Workforce Plan 22-25 Progress Report on page 87. Craig, I believe this is you.
Thank you very much. And for yourself, Chair. This is the update on our current workforce plan that we've done on a regular basis to the IGIB. As you can see in the report, we're pleased that all the major development areas currently in target. A lot of work has been done by the teams, and this has been through SNT. So, this will be one of the last updates we give on this current plan that we've got, because it finishes for this financial year, and we're currently working on a new plan as we speak. And this will be taken into account both Greater Glasgow and Clyde Health Board and also Inverclyde Council as well. So, what's been done, we're pleased with what's been at the moment, but as always, happy to take any questions on my behalf.
Thank you very much. Before I open that up, I have to say this is a really good piece of work. It's great to see the progress. As chair, it's really reassuring when we go through the work practice and we see that we've achieved what we set out to achieve. That's no mean feat, quite frankly. So, in the context of that, Diana.
It was about the governance of the plan, which it says is to the strategic planning group. And whilst it is a sort of subgroup of the strategic planning group, it is meant to be worked in partnership with the staff side and trade unions of the staff, and it's meant to go to the staff partnership forum as well. And this one hasn't as yet.
Great.
Teresa, that's a very fair point, and we'll make sure that this happens going forward.
Yeah, you content with that? Excellent.
Thanks.
It was to ask if the new workforce plan would be seeking representation from first sector as well, because they were a key part of the previous workforce plan.
Yeah, I can confirm the building, yes.
Kate.
So just to reassure the IGB is that NHS GGC are in the point of developing their workforce plan, but we're in that middle space, so we will take what the council and GGC, but make sure that it sits with our strategic objectives. So you will be part of them.
Okay. Paul?
Thanks very much for this. You've done very well. You're at 24 out of 25 targets, so it's unfair for me to go on the run. That's outstanding, but I may. You're developing a skill of the people to make sure their management complaints everyone the SARS and for the date of March 25. Do you think you'll be able to achieve the statutory time or the advised timelines for that, please?
Yes, we will be. Sorry, just come in because we've got a relationship between the council and ourselves that was strengthened our processes, and we've got much more capacity that we've developed in that area, and I think we're on track to do that.
I think if we get your SARS done, we'll be the only place that is done.
Well, Katrina leads for the SARS, I think, for GG&C, and actually Laura would be able to kind of say as the chief nurse, but we are actually our SARS are pretty low in comparison to the performance report. There's Katrina back. The performance report in comparison to the other HSCPs.
Good. Excellent. Thank you for that question. Just in terms, again, for the benefit, Vicky, in terms of next steps for the next workforce plan, what is the time scale for that? When do we expect to see that come to us? Obviously, we're dependent on what Greater Glasgow Clyde are doing, but assuming they do when they say they'll do it, when do we expect to present into the committee?
Through yourself, Chair, we're obviously starting working on that now. We're looking to try and get it to May or June.
Okay.
Thank you
very much for that. Yes.
I wasn't going to ask my stupid question, but I'm just going to ask.
No such thing. It's a stupid question.
Right,
Well, stupid answers from me, but that's different.
So I kind of know the answer, but I'm just making a point. So I know we've got RAG status, but we're actually doing RAG B status. So can we, if we're putting blue in, can we have a commentary what blue actually means? Because we've got RAG status, which we all understand, red, amber, green, and then we've got blue. And I think you can sometimes add grey, but so I think we probably need an explanation what a blue means.
Sure, happy to do that for yourself, Chair. The blue is one which we've totally completed. The vast majority of things we're on track, as in that we're doing that. It's the one area where we're absolutely completing it. But for the next one, totally take the point on board and make it a wee bit clearer.
Thank you for that. In that case, if we're happy to accept item number 8, we're going to move on to item number 9. IGB Category 1 Responder Update, and again, Craig, I think this is you. Busy day today.
Thank you very much for yourself, Chair. Obviously, when this was written, this didn't take into account the recent events which have taken place in the last few days. So, had it been the case, this report would have had a lot more at this particular point. But I'm happy to give a little bit of updates. Some of my colleagues can maybe come in and help me with this one as well. This is our annual update paper showing how we carry out the necessary arrangements to discharge the duties of being Category 1 responder. As part of this, we have a requirement to have up-to-date individual business continuity plans, and this has been evident in the last few days and shows all the good work that we have when you have these particular processes in place. We're also part of the Council Resilience Management Team and the Greater Glasgow Clyde Resilience Group, and these have both been in operation in the last week, as you have seen. We continue to work with our partners and continue to participate in wider training and group resilience exercises if they're relevant. There's going to be a few of them coming up in the next few months, but I think just drawing on what's happened over the last number of days, it just shows you that when we have these processes in place, we have business continuity processes in place, how quickly we can respond and how we can make the difference in the community as such. And I think that's been evident over the last few days. I'm more than happy to take any questions in this paper, but also more than happy if somebody and my colleagues want to come and add anything to that as well.
Excellent. So,
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think we were in a really lucky position because not many organisations get to test their contingency plan. But the fact that we had a real live one was really probably good in a way because it gets to test that it actually works in theory. So it's just interesting to see, obviously you've mentioned that it worked really well and that was reassuring to have the plan that you follow. But it was just to see if there was anything there from a lessons learned, that you had there in line. And just as a wee anecdote, probably nothing relevant, I just watched a movie where they had their contingency plan in a big folder, but one of the contingency was floods, so the folder got damp in the ground. So they were all trying to read it, but the paper, it was all disintegrating as we're talking about. So, so is there any lessons learned from there? Thank you. And probably, sorry, just to say, and that probably a big thanks for the work that was done over the weekend as well, just to note that, because I know lots of stuff was going on behind the scenes and a lot of our community did need help and the help was there, so that's probably the most important part.
That's very good to hear. Should note that as well.
Yeah, so I just wanted to touch on that. I think that our response across the HSEB was quite exceptional in that our contingency plans worked, but there's always learning, and I think that we are going to look at what that learning looks like, less for the HSEP and how they respond, but around our providers and our providers' responses. Because we need to kind of be a wee bit more clearer about what their contingency plans look like, and perhaps they weren't as robust as we would have expected them to be, but nevertheless, the whole team around here were out supporting it, the senior team at the weekend, because we have that challenge around urban but rurality, and the impact of the weather in Inverclyde can be significant, but I think that the team and the workforce done an exceptional job over the weekend, and it was managed really, really well.
I think as chair, certainly I'd welcome if at some point, if it's appropriate, if we have a paper on the lessons learned, and just so we can get a real sense of what actually happened as well, because you all have the assumption of really scary storm, sort of once in a century, but it's actually knowing what actually happens within our community as well, how we responded as well, just recording that, but also, as you were saying, in terms of the impact on our partners as well and how they responded and what we can do to support them going forward to when it eventually happens again, because we will have another severe weather incident of that, there's no doubt, how we then respond to that and support them so they're in a better position.
We'd be happy to do that, and I'd be keen for some of the case studies around some individual practitioners that have went, without naming them per se in the public domain, that went over and beyond, because some people had to walk over fields for great lengths of time, because of the flooding, to get medication to a very vulnerable person. So we did rise up to our full height last weekend, so we'll be happy to provide that.
At this point, I'll just go call staff awards. Francesca.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'd just like to associate myself with Councillor Quinn's comments about the thanks to everybody involved in providing that response. I think what we're really hearing is that I suppose that staff really, went over and above their calling. So it was great to see that at all levels of the workforce, just a huge thanks. And I suppose what we're hearing is that it was really, really challenging, but it could have been a lot worse. And I think that's because of these group plans and a great workforce in place. So thanks very much for adding that as well, Councillor Quinn.
Thank you for that. If we can minute that as well, it's really important, and that gets back to our people as well. I know we should work quite nebulous as a committee in terms of how we exist to our general people, but I think it's good if we can actually feed that back as well.
Thanks, Chair. I sit on the Local Resilience Partnership for the West of Scotland as the TSI West Scotland representative, and we've taken part in some of the previous exercises. And it's great that everything was stepped up over the weekend. I echo the comments before. I think going forward it would be good to think about how we can work together and maybe planning better for the future. Your point, Kate, around providers, I think our third sector organisations in the wider sense, and just some of that learning, training opportunities that might be available going forward, because I think we know a lot more of these things are likely to happen and continue to happen. So just keeping those opportunities for partnership working. Just like during COVID, when many of our partners did step forward as part of that resilience team.
Yeah,
Good point, well made.
we would be very supportive of that.
Great, well, look forward to hearing more about it. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you all for your comments and questions, colleagues. If we can then move on to agenda item number 10, please. This is the Current Care Home Support Team report. Alan, again, you're up. What's it? Yourself? Sorry.
That's all right. It's going to be me. That's okay, Chair. So this is a report that we pulled together, which actually formed part of an NHSGG response to Scottish Government. So through the COVID really, there was set up across NHSGGC as part of the Exec Nurse Director responsibilities that came down during COVID in 2020. There was monies that came to GGC in the tune of 3.1 million, which was used to set up something we call the Care Home Collaborative. Some of you might be very, very aware of that, some of you maybe not quite so much. The Care Home Collaborative was set up, and alongside that, the local huddles, as they were known for COVID, who were part of the care home response to COVID, developed into what we now have, comes off your tongue so easy, the collaborative care home support teams. So basically, we had to provide evidence of what it was that money had been used for. Now, we've always provided evidence every year, but this year we just got a more detailed set of questions from Scottish Government. And we pulled together a response for that about the assurance in terms of what's been put in place and the additional support that's gone to residents and how we've worked collaboratively. But it's the first time really that we've produced a paper that hasn't been on one aspect of what we do for care homes or one team's work toward care homes. And we just thought that in terms of that, it was worth bringing it here to try and show a bit of a totality of the work that's been going on. So basically the paper, you've all had a chance to read it, but it talks about the care home assurance, the chat visits, which you've all heard quite a lot of, and how we pick up the themes and trends that of what our care homes are requiring, and in terms of particularly around training, which we put in place through that collaborative. But also some of the local things where we've picked up through conversations at the meeting that we've felt the care homes were struggling a bit in terms of residents who've been more highly acutely ill in relation to stress and distress, and we've put in some training for our care homes, which was put in at times and in venues that suited them, and was really, really well attended. We've also talked a little bit about Call Before You Convey, which is a pilot which is completely funded from this work. And through that work, we have put in Band 6 nurses every weekend who are out supporting our care homes. Started initially looking at palliative and end-of-life care, and we've started moving that on slightly more now to look at catheter-acquired UTIs, and we're hoping to move forward to looking at more work in relation to people with chest infections as well. But the initial data from that, as you'll see, has shown that we've actually had a reduction in calls to our Scottish Ambulance colleagues of over 11%. And that for those where we have called an ambulance, there's been much less of them conveyed to hospital, showing that we've managed to bring together that community response to keep people where they are. As part of Call Before You Convey, we've set up a virtual ward, and every Thursday afternoon a very small group of staff meet, including colleagues from our Gowan Hospice, to talk about anybody that we're aware of who's currently near the end of their life in a care home, and to have conversations about how we can plan for their care over the weekend. The paper talks about that the pilot has showed us so far that there have been 37 individual residents from December 23 to August 24 who were discussed as part of that pilot, and every one of them died in their care home and weren't conveyed through to the acute services. And actually, I was doing a quick head count this morning through our data, and there's been another 20 that haven't been conveyed, taking us up till the end of December. So everybody that we're discussing so far has not been conveyed. And I think that's something we should be really proud of. And in a recent event that we held looking at the development of our strategy for palliative and end-of-life care, our acute colleagues were saying that they're really noticing the difference that these individuals aren't arriving in our A&E department. On top of that, we've put in some training. Our Gowan Hospice have run a 6-week education programme, with our care homes, and our care homes have absolutely been involved in that. We've had significant staff trained to do that, and we've got a further course that will be running around about March time. We've done specific work looking at urinary tract infections, where the collaborative supported us with a care home that had had a significant rise in the number of urinary tract infections in the home. And we were able to bring that number down and do a lot of work about increasing fluid intake and awareness of urinary tract infections and the avoidance of them, which made a significant difference to that home, and that work is now being rolled out wider. So I think that just gives you a little bit of a feel for some of the work that's been going on, and I just hope it's of interest and relevance to everybody to actually be able to see that. The work's all continuing. At the current time, we haven't heard back from the Scottish Government that are we definitely getting funding again for next year. I say it has continued since 21, so we're hopeful that it will be. And so what they've said so far is the evidence we provide has been very good across the system, but we're waiting for that final agreement for the ongoing funding. Happy to take any questions.
Colleagues, Becky, and then Paul.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you so much for sharing this. I think it's amazing the amount of work that's gone in and the real difference to people's quality of lives, and all the work you're doing in the care homes is fantastic. So I wanted to say that, and then I was going to ask about ongoing funding, but you've already alluded to that. So fingers crossed we hear back soon about that. But thank you.
Absolutely, but we've not had any problem up until now getting the funding. So we are hopeful that it will come through, but we're just waiting for that final rubber stamp. And I never like to count the chickens.
Again, so not a question, comment. That's actually a very impressive reduction in people being transferred from care homes, because the worst thing you can do is send them to A&E in the terminal stages. So that's very impressive. So keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Kate?
We felt it was really important as a management team for the RGB to see this, because the danger is that you get into the reporting cycle that is driven sometimes about deficits as opposed to strengths. So I really appreciate the comments here and just want to thank the team for all the work that they make that happens in this area, because it is significant. Paul, there's no getting in there.
Absolutely, I very much echo those comments when I was reading this paper. I was just taking down notes. I was just going, really positive. This is great, good work, and it's really good to see. And the fact is that we are making a significant difference, as Paul has already said, in Becky as well. This is really, really good work and having a positive impact on people's lives. So very much commend the actions of the team, and fingers crossed, as you say, we get the money going forward, because this is making a really positive impact for our most vulnerable in the community, and while we continue.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. Just looking around. Okay, we are content with that report. I think we're more than content, we're delighted with that report. In that case, if we can then move on to, I believe it's Jonathan now, for Children's and Family Services redesign. Jonathan, are you with us?
I am indeed, Chair. Thank you very much indeed. And hopefully colleagues in the chambers can hear me okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity to bring this report to today's meeting of the IJB. It really seeks to provide an update on a range of activity associated with our own Integrated Children and Family Services, and it really follows up, as has already been discussed, on a previous paper that came to the last meeting of the IJB around the issue of children and families placements as one particular service area that we're seeking to address in Part 3 redesign as well. The paper highlights a number of areas by means of explanation around the continuing high demand on services as a consequence of the pandemic, and also the ongoing impact of the cost of living crisis. And these have been further impacted in terms of the operational capacity by some policy and legislative changes which have added to the duties and expectations upon services at a time of significant budget pressures, as has already been highlighted in Craig's report this afternoon. The paper that I brought last time, just to refresh people's memories, highlighted in part that the spend on residential placements and external foster care placements in Inverclyde had increased from about 1.59 million in 2018-19 to 4.95 million in the last financial year. But the redesign, it's really important to highlight, isn't solely focused on financial challenges. It's absolutely rooted in the commitment to improving outcomes for our vulnerable children, young people and families. So that's why over recent months, a service specification has been developed, which reflects that aspirational vision for our children and families. And it's also founded on those individual needs and risks, and also recognising the strengths of families in Inverclyde. So at 3.4 and 3.5, there's further insight into the values and objectives of the redesign. And the paper also provides that clarity that services need to continue to reduce risks to our most vulnerable children and young people, but also to support those who are looked after whilst preparing them to move towards independence and adulthood. And that's always mindful of the impact of multiple indicators of trauma, which impact on many young people, and the importance of inclusive approaches for all. At section 4.1, there is a diagram which I hope helps to illustrate the vision of the specification, and that's really about how we move towards a clearer model of a tiered approach of targeted interventions, which recognise those strengths and the expertise of our families, but also the really strong third sector partners in Inverclyde and the value of universal services, but also looking at the skills and the workforce requirements to be able to reduce risk and provide that intensive support to families and young people who need it most to reduce the risk of harm further. Further on in the report, on the work that's already been ongoing to shift that balance of care away from those interventions whenever children have already become looked after, and actually how we are investing in earlier help and family support, particularly in partnership with third sector partners. That's meant that we've been able to bring in targeted interventions, particularly the Sidestep project for older young people at risk in the community, but also close relationships with Home Start and Children First around those earlier interventions to scaffold families. We have done some work alongside this activity around our local capacity, because we're mindful as we seek to shift the balance of care to earlier help. We're also aware that with the continuing care legislation that came in about 10 years ago across Scotland, that there is that very clear duty to support young people who are looked after up to the age of 21. And that is a duty in the legislation, but there hasn't been direct funding for that in Scotland. And that means that it's a direct contributory factor to the overall overspend that we've spoken about already this. And that essentially means that young people can choose to stay with their foster carer or in their residential placement. And that reflects some really positive work in terms of those loving and nurturing relationships. But it also means that there is reduced capacity to bring some young people in external placements back to Inverclyde, and also for any other children who may require to be looked after and be looked after away from home. It continues that need to look for those external placements. We know in terms of our weekly cost of care in Inverclyde, it's lower than some of the areas that we benchmark against. And that's why the redesign is really looking at how we can extend our intensive support model to reduce that need for external placements and provide targeted intensive interventions to young people and also to younger children and their families. So I've mentioned already a few of those partnerships that are supporting us around our Whole Family Wellbeing Fund and the development of an early help hub. Our partnerships with third sector providers to work with those families of younger children, but also the recognition that we need to develop a programme to increase our local fostering capacity. We have seen across Scotland a national reduction in the number of fostering households over the past 5 years, and that is reflected very clearly in small communities such as Inverclyde, where we've got some really strong and very committed foster carers, but as carers decide to retire, the local capacity reduces as well. The work around evidence-based approaches has continued with family group decision making, and also more recently the implementation of signs of safety and healing, and that reflects the need to ensure that we've got a strengths-based assessment and planning framework for children who are at risk of harm and may require to be supported through child protection processes, because we see from the data that Inverclyde's slightly above the Scottish average for the number of children on the child protection register. So we've commenced that training and we're rolling that out across our health and social work workforce and also with key partners over the next couple of years. And that really seeks to skill up our workforce to be able to provide those valuable and evidence-based interventions. The paper also recognises something that members will be very familiar with, and that is the importance in investing in our workforce, but also the challenges in Inverclyde and nationally in terms of the recruitment and retention of social workers. And we've seen that really magnified over the past few years coming through the pandemic. And in children and family social work, particularly locally, we're seeing vacancy levels for frontline social workers varying from about 30%, sometimes up to 50% of that particular pocket of the workforce. So schemes such as Grow Our Own, where we're investing in our paraprofessional workforce to undertake the social work degree, and the financial support to final year master's students, and also supporting our newly qualified social workers in their supported first years, have been really important to help retain our workforce. But the challenges do continue, and we continue to work with that higher demand and that reduced capacity within the workforce. The report finally does make reference to some of the changes around social work governance that we've made in the HSCP, and that's really to strengthen the leadership of children and families and criminal justice social work, with a dedicated head of service coming into post within the next month, and also by realigning the chief social work duties across the partnership with a greater focus on workforce development and those statutory public protection duties. So it is broad paper, but it hopefully gives members an opportunity to have a clearer understanding about the range of activity. It's certainly not a finished story, but it's a work in progress, and I'm clearly, Chair, happy for any questions. Thank you.
Jonathan, thank you for that presentation. Thank you very much for this comprehensive paper as well. As with all the papers today, this was excellent. Gave me personally a really good clear understanding of direction of travel and also the challenges we face. It's all not all good news, but we are clearly aware from here the risks we face, and we have a comprehensive approach to actually dealing with them as well. So as Chair, I take great reassurance from that. Colleagues, I'll open it up. Do we have any questions or comments for Jonathan at this point in time?
Thanks, Chair. I think just again to echo your comments, I think we felt really well informed through this redesign process and really kind of guided through it. Obviously, that's not the main focus of the process, you know, it's more important that we get it right. But I think we really appreciate that element of it from yourself, Jonathan, and the team, that I think there are so many positives in there, and think really a lot of hope for ourselves in terms of the things that you're saying about the signs of safety and healing, and particularly that strengthening the family capacity with the early intervention projects. I think there's lots to be really hopeful for there, and thanks to yourself and the teams for all the work you're doing in terms of really kind of strengthening what we're doing for care experienced young people, and also reducing the need for young people to become care experienced in Inverclyde. So thanks very much for that.
Thanks, John. You mentioned about the external placements, and you've made a substantial reduction in the cost of these. What sort of things are you talking about? Is it things that can't be provided, specialist services out with that can't be provided within the HSCP?
Thank you. Through yourself, Chair. It's a combination of factors, actually. Sometimes there is the need to go externally for particular placements, and that may be about complexity. It could be about children or young people with complex additional support needs, and also it can be necessary whenever a young person meets the criteria for secure care, and there are a small number of secure care providers nationally. The challenge, I suppose, more often is with our limited local capacity. Whenever a child becomes looked after and needs to be looked after away from home, where we're not seeing the capacity for local placements expanding, partly because of continuing care that I spoke about before, where young people are staying in their placement for longer, but also whenever we see a reduction in the number of foster carers, both registered with Inverclyde Council and with external providers as well, it then means that we need to look further afield. And we don't do that lightly. There's a really strong assessment criteria around that, particularly because we know that children thrive better when they remain closer to their community of origin and they can maintain those relationships with friends, with family in school, etc. But unfortunately, the demand and the need based on the risk that the teams are managing means that at times we do need to go to those external providers.
And if I would just like to add that sometimes the decision to place children out with Inverclyde is done by other statutory partners, and it isn't not necessarily just around what the HSCP. So if you think about the decision of a sheriff or the children's hearing system, so we find ourselves in that situation quite often as well.
Thank you very much.
That's really good. Context came back. Colleagues are looking round. Are these content with paper? I believe you are, John. Thank you very much for that. Okay, colleagues, if we can then move on to agenda item number 12. This is Community Pharmacy Services in Inverclyde. Alan, what would you like this time?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, members of the Integration Joint Board will remember that there was a previous paper brought in the last meeting around primary care services, of which one of them was primary care pharmacy services. There was a bit of dialogue in the request to bring back to the IJB some more background and information around community pharmacy services. And I'm very, very pleased to be bringing this paper today, which will give the IJB an overview of the delivery of the community pharmacy core, national, local and additional services to the community of the HSCP. Community pharmacists in Scotland contract with their respective health boards to provide pharmaceutical care services under the community pharmacy contract. We're very fortunate in Inverclyde to have 19 community pharmacists which provide support to our community across Inverclyde. Within that contract, there are core pharmaceutical services which must be provided as a part of the contract. They cover Pharmacy First, which we've mentioned earlier in the Winter Plan paper, and also Pharmacy First Plus, where we're building on the skills of pharmacists who are also independent prescribers. And we're very lucky in Inverclyde that we've got 14 active independent prescribing community pharmacists. If you look across the whole of GG&C, there's 171, and it's something that we're keen to start to continue to build up the momentum there. Pharmacy services also, core services are also involved with public health service, acute medication service, medication care and review, and quality improvement work. Whilst these core services are delivered by community pharmacists, there are also a list of national suite of services that are optional, but as said locally in the community in Inverclyde, the majority of pharmacists also offer services across gluten-free food service, unfettered care, stoma service, national naloxone holding service. Obviously, this demonstrates how busy local pharmacies are, but there are also the local pharmacy initiatives that are taking place, and this is where pharmacies can negotiate locally to take part in sort of various service provision and receive remuneration for it. These are quite a wide sweep, but just to name a few are about emergency hormonal contraception, healthy start vitamins, smoking cessation programmes, sexual health advice, palliative care, again, natural programmes, hepatitis C treatment, community pharmacy nutritional support service, and pharmacy exacerbation of COPD service. So you can see a flavour of a lot of activity within our local pharmacy communities across the pharmacists, the pharmacy technicians and the support staff. Over and above this, there are also additional services which community pharmacies are involved in. I think a key one is around pharmaceutical waste. We know that evidence suggests up to 10% of all medication prescribed, unfortunately, is wasted for various reasons, and pharmacies could play a really strong part in the community message and supporting the HSEP and reducing pharmacology waste. Pharmacists are also involved in part of their statutory training around child protection, vulnerable adults, controlled drugs, the early warning system and the emergency dispensing service. In terms of our community pharmacies, I say there's 19 across the area. They're very well supported. We have a community pharmacy champion who links with all the local pharmacies, ensuring that issues the pharmacies are supported with issues and how that's taken forward. We have a very strong pharmacy locality group, which the HSEP pharmacy team lead, again linking with all the community pharmacies, meeting on a regular basis, but also support. We saw at the weekend there again with the storm, we're very quickly working with our community pharmacies about which pharmacies were able to remain open, which one maybe had disruption to service in medicine deliveries, and also how pharmacies can mutually support each other. So again, the HSEP work very closely with our colleagues in the independent pharmacies about how that service was maintained. And we have a community pharmacy development team, again, that's part of the board working with independent pharmacies to see how we can grow pharmacy services locally and support the community as part of that wider work of us working as a multidisciplinary team. Just to say thank you for our colleagues within the local community pharmacies and pharmacy team that pulled this paper together on behalf of the IJB today. Happy to take any questions.
Colleagues?
Thank you very much for that. Can I ask about the Pharmacy First, the Pharmacy First Plus programme? I gather there's plans to expand this. So two questions. Is there capacity for the pharmacists to take on additional conditions? And is there anything the HSCP can do to encourage more people, more independent prescribers?
Yeah, so it's a good point. Probably the first question. I think that is an issue around capacity, because we know that our local pharmacists, independent pharmacists are working at pretty much full capacity. I think in terms of the pharmacists themselves, they're quite keen to take on the independent prescribing role, to do the training for it, and obviously as HSP we're keen to support them in that. But I think it's a balance about what can be achieved and the current demands on local pharmacists. I think obviously locally, as I said, with 14 active independent prescribers at the moment, I think there's a kind of willingness there to do that, but the reality is also how to provide all the other services at the same time. I've certainly sort of fed back via our local lead pharmacists that very question you're asking about how do we continue to develop with the current demands that are on the service. So that's something I would certainly be happy to take back and get a bit more information on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. I'll take Becky and then Sandra. Becky, you're still on mute. Our lip reading's not that good, sorry.
Sorry, took my hand down, but not the mute. So thank you. I was going to say that's actually a really important point that Paul's just made, so I'd be interested to hear that following up. I was actually going to just ask if you could tell me about the naloxone. And I bring this up a few times, but given the drug-related death rate in our area is really quite concerning. And I note that all pharmacies should hold naloxone. However, it can only be dispensed by people who've done the training. So I just wanted to check, have we got somebody who's done the naloxone training in all of the pharmacies? So it is really available?
Kate?
Yeah, my understanding, yes, but I haven't got the up-to-date, but the ADP actually monitors all of that, Becky, so we can provide you that information afterwards, but I don't have it at the top of my head, but I'll let you know.
Yeah, I actually don't know that one, but that's one that, as Kate says, we can get back, we can link back on that one.
If you're happy to take that,
yeah, thank you. We'll take it as an action. Okay.
Thank you.
Sandra?
Yeah, just to answer that last question, I mean, as pharmacy champion for Inverclyde HSCP, over a year ago when we went through training, part of that was, and part of me visiting all the pharmacies in Inverclyde was just to check, what their status was about naloxone, and just make sure that it was available at all pharmacies, and it was. They're well up on that, and able to provide that and administer it when necessary, which fortunately isn't it doesn't happen very often at all, but they are there to advise patients that come in that are at risk to take up that opportunity. I would just like to say about the paper, I'd like to express my gratitude to Margaret Maskey, who's the lead clinical pharmacist for the HSCP, for drawing together all the information that I gave her for this paper, and for the stats that Alan Harrison gave as well. There was a question about independent prescribers who take part in the pharmacy first part of the programme. I myself am an independent prescriber and have been for 10 years, but now that I'm retired and not working for in primary care or contracted to a local community pharmacy contractor, I cannot use my qualification. And there's a few of us like that who have gone through the training, have that experience, but no longer able to use it. The only way I can use it is to write a private prescription, which I would only do within what I considered was my competences. So that is something that is being talked about, is how we can actually use that resource, which has kind of fallen off as well. I'm happy to answer any questions about the paper as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. Any questions for Sandra at this point? I'm not seeing any. Just a point for myself. I'm not sure if it falls to yourself, Sandra, or to Alan. I'm conscious that there continues to be challenges, certainly in England and Wales, in terms of additional non-contracted services, such as the set boxes, making deliveries to vulnerable members of our community, and weekend opening hours as well. Alan or Sandra, are you able to give us any context or understanding of where we currently are in Scotland? Is there a concern about the level of service? Because I know there's a lot that our community pharmacies do that are effectively voluntary, and we're relying on their goodwill. And I think goodwill only extends so far. Sandra, your hands up.
Yeah, community pharmacies are extremely busy places. I still do the, 1 or 2 locums a week, one in the busiest community pharmacy in Inverclyde. And it is a matter of, sort of balancing and using the skills that are within the workforce, within the pharmacy as well. The number of services, I graduated in 1979. I've been in pharmacy in and out of it for a long, long time. It has changed radically over those five decades, and become busier and busier and offered more and more. Generally speaking, well, not generally, yes, pharmacists are happy to extend and use the skills that they've got, but it does impact on how busy they are. You can see from the paper that community pharmacy isn't all just about dispensing and giving out medicines on prescription. It's a lot more, and that's a good thing in many respects, because it does put pressure on community pharmacy. Yeah, I don't know what else I can say about that. They cope incredibly well, and that is a lot to do with how they manage the pharmacy and how they manage their staff.
Thanks, Sandra. I don't know if Alan, if you want to come in at this point.
Just to reiterate, I think it goes back to the earlier question. I think we have a very, very strong and proactive local pharmacy community, but it's the capacity around, prioritising what can be achieved. But we do have great strength, as the paper says, in terms of community champion, the pharmacy locality group and the community pharmacy development team, which always look at the art of the possible, but it does boil down to capacity. So I'll certainly reiterate what Councillor Reynolds has said.
Thank you for that. Colleagues, any more questions or comments follow up on that? No, I'm not seeing that. Again, thank you very much for that paper. I just echo everyone's involved in pulling together. That's a really good paper. It's given me an invaluable insight into where we are. So thank you very much for that. If we can then move on to the next item, which I believe is itself as Chief Officer, agenda item number 13.
So just to say to the IJB that Chief Officer's report is just really a highlight report. And what we've agreed some time ago is that the IJB was keen to hear our performance around delayed discharges and for that to be prominent within the Chief Officer's report. So I've only got 2 items today, we've been pleased to know. So you can see that our delayed discharges continue to be strong. We continue to hold probably number one, if not number two position, but mainly number one. And you can see that from the charts, so the bar charts, that we're kind of holding our own with less fluctuations there. So our delayed, more importantly, is about the bed days lost. So you can see that that trajectory has shown a significant reduction in our bed days lost, because that obviously coincides with our delayed episodes, so it has a positive impact on that. And you can see that within the bed days lost, that we're starting to plateau of where we think our bed days lost, but we hope that we can continue to get them down. I think what the things that's really striking here is that it's been a really busy year. So Inverclyde's not a big area, but we supported 1,400 residents from that were supported around our social care services, and 700 were also supported with complex needs from a social worker. So we're continuing, even though that the focus is on delayed discharges, we're looking at what is going on in our communities, so that there's always a kind of balance to be struck around the focuses. And so we're looking at our front doors and our back doors and our middle doors, if you want to be clear about that. So in talking about that, if you would see that our urgent hubs could be our middle door, so we had 1,661, which if you think about the stream, that's our midstream, of people supported by our urgent hub and provided with equipment and techniques to stay at home. And that's really important, because that's part of our priorities for a strategic plan, is that early help and early intervention. So I feel pretty confident that we're heading in the right way. And obviously, part of the work that the team has done is refresh the pathway around our emergency departments, because a lot of people end up in emergency departments that don't require to be admitted. And we can see that we've got that, we're getting the balance quite right, that we're picking these people up too. So it's not a matter of waiting until they get in hospital to come in and to intervene. And I think it's a combination of all of these factors that are really helping us with our delayed discharges, because if you just look at one single point in a system, you don't truly see the benefits unless you're targeting the rest. Now, I'm not going to go on, because Laura gave us that fantastic presentation, but at the end of the day, that is very clear in the call that you can convey. So we're finding our continuing to get challenges around volume, but I think that we've reviewed our processes and we feel that we're in quite a solid position and take the vote. So happy to take any questions on this bit before I move to the other bit.
Colleagues, any questions about delayed discharge? From my perspective as chair, obviously this is very much a positive success story, and as you see, something like page 155 in terms of bed days lost to delayed discharges, it's really good where we can join the dots to see how call before you convey and other activities we're doing is having a necessary knock-on impact, which for us is clearly we're reaping the rewards of that. I'm wondering, from the point of view of our partner HSCPs across the region, how are we sharing the information of our experience and what's working for us? It may not work for them as well, but how, for example, Paul's here as Vice Chair of Glasgow IGB as well, and his other role in the IGBs, and it's like, how do we then make sure the information, that the things that we're doing, we're sharing those successes and learnings, and likewise, how are we learning from our colleagues as well?
So there's 6 chief officers meet on a regular basis, and used to be weekly, it's now fortnightly, and there is the opportunity to discuss that. The constructs of each of the HSCPs are quite different, may I add. So what sometimes works for us in Inverclyde might be very difficult to translate into a bigger system. And one of the things about Inverclyde is that we're the right size to kind of anticipate where our demand is. So I wouldn't want to kind of say that not the rest of our colleagues are making these kind of improvements. I suppose that one of the things that we do, that Alan goes on the call on a weekly basis through the CRAG, we share that work nationally, so that's getting shared through the CRAG. And if there has been places that have been interested to understand what we're doing, but there's still a need to be more curious in the system about what the benefits are, particularly sometimes in smaller systems, about what can translate to larger systems. But generally, people do come to us if they are interested and understand that. But we went on a big journey, and it started with a redesign of our social care workforce, which, if you think back to where we were in terms of our delayed discharges, that reflected the fact that we couldn't fill posts. We were operating with high vacancies, I think 80 vacancies out of a workforce of 420. Today we're lucky if we've got 2. So that just shows you the knock-on effect around the redesign and being clear about what your outcome is, what you're trying to achieve. One of the good things is that people wanted to stay at home in Inverclyde, and our strategic plan continues to support them doing that, and that there'll be new initiatives coming in line over the next year to 2 years in the HSCP that will kind of solidify that approach by the use of digital care. So it's a combination of factors, but we always say we're happy to have a chat with anyone. Okay, so thank you.
Paul?
Can I just make a comment on that? Because you mentioned the CRAG, which is the Scottish Government, I think from some secretariat person himself, and there's a new metric we've got in, which is presented by, which is the number of delayed discharges per 100,000. I think it would be interesting to show your figures, because I think you might find Inverclyde City at number 1.
Yeah.
Alan?
I just say I think Inverclyde are doing very well, yeah. But it's interesting again, that meeting as Kate is saying, there's a lot of cross information, sharing of information, and I think what fits for us, we'll certainly look at to learn from others as well. But I think at the moment, all our colleagues working together, you can see at the moment we're doing very well. Yeah. In terms of what you're saying there, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, that's obviously very reassuring to hear, and it's good that there are open and established channels of communication. So, I am always hesitant to oversimplify and say that because we're getting it right here, you can just take what we're doing and transfer it across, because, as you rightly said, Kate, simply, that is not the case. I wish it was, but it's not. But it's good that there is the established means of communication, so that there are learnings that can be shared. And we can learn as well, because just because we're getting it right now, it doesn't mean will necessarily continue. Things will change, patients change, the population ages, so the challenges will develop, and we'll hopefully rise to those as well. But yeah, I think that would be really helpful. Thank you. That gives me reassurance. And then moving on to quality.
Equality. So if for some of our more long-standing members of the IGB, sorry, I forgot to put this on, for some of our long-standing members of the IGB, that we did an update around our equalities plan and the work that we had to take us to be consistent with the requirements of the legislation. And we worked really hard to get back on track. We made a commitment to bring an update to the IGB every so often through the equalities, and as opposed to just given a big paper, we just put it in the Chief Officer's report. So you can see that we are on track in terms of our equalities work, and that we're hoping that we're going to kind of undertake an audit, and we will come back probably to the audit, the audit committee with the outcome, and it'll be up for the audit committee to make a decision about where that goes. But actually, we're also going to integrate it within our 6 monthly progress report around our quality outcome plan, because that's really important. Because if we don't have the qualities at the heart of what we do in Inverclyde around our outcomes, we end up seeing it as a separate activity where it's one and the same. So, not got any other questions. Not got anything more to say there. If anyone's got any questions.
Colleagues, questions for Kate of the team? Seeing anyone? Okay. Kate, thank you very much for that update. Okay, we now move on to item number 14, which is private area of
Yeah, can you just